Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are discussing the 5 players in the 2025 NFL Draft I think the San Francisco 49ers must and need to avoid at pick number 11. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and let's dive into here on 49ers Access. Again, the top 5 players the San Francisco 49ers must avoid at pick number 11. Starting off with number 1 on my board, it's one that has been often mocked to the San Francisco 49ers. I can't fault many fans and even many pundits out there for saying that this next player, this first player, belongs in San Francisco, or at least fits what they want to do on the defensive side of things, and that is edge rusher out of Texas A&M, Shemar Stewart. And let's start out with the good, because Shemar Stewart brings so much to the table, right? He's 6'5", 265 pounds. He even dropped 20 pounds to get himself ready for the NFL draft and combine. When you talk about fitting the wide 9 system, Shemar Stewart checks almost every single box for the San Francisco 49ers. He has powerful hands, very violent hands, knows how to use his hands in his pass rush, the ability to stack and shed blocks against the run, again, coming back to those violent and aggressive hands. He's one of the top guys in this year's draft. When you talk about Saleh's defense now back in San Francisco, the ability to be used in the stunt game, Shemar Stewart is one of the best of the edge rushers in this class, whether it is to free up other edge rushers, to free up the interior guys on San Francisco's defense, or being the looper around, rushing in free lanes to get to the quarterback. Shemar Stewart can do those things extremely well. He's an athletic freak that at times you'll say, wow, what can this guy become at the NFL level? There are things he does, you say, that's freaky. The traits are there, and it makes you wonder just how great he can be as an edge rusher in the NFL. He's very strong, tremendous bull rush. He'll knock back blockers, guards, edge rushers. But that's, although a lot of good things, kind of where the good points end for a player like Shemar Stewart. Going back to the bull rush, he is a bull rush or nothing kind of player. You're not going to have a plan to rush the quarterback. There is no pass rushing plan. It is simply use my strength, use my density, and if I can just force my way to the quarterback, that's my plan of attack. You would like to see someone, when you're considering them, just outside of the top 10, be more refined as a pass rusher. We'll get to one of those players down the road towards the end of today's show, but Shemar Stewart really doesn't have a plan when it comes to getting after the quarterback. You're not going to see spin moves. You're not going to see swim moves. You're really, although he has violent hands and knows how to use those hands to stack and shed blocks, he doesn't actually even use hand swipes to get past tackles and get to the quarterback. He is a bull rush or nothing. If you want to call him a nerf or nothing player, that is Shemar Stewart, where you're hoping down the road he can develop a pass rushing plan, but on day 1 at 11th overall in 2025, you're getting a very, I don't want to say bare bones, but to a certain degree, a one-dimensional player where you're banking on the athletic traits, but you really don't know what he'll be in his future at the NFL level. Another concern is, yes, he has the bull rush. Yes, it is there. It is very evident in how he plays football. When you lose 20 pounds getting ready for the NFL draft, ready for the NFL combine, you have to ask yourself, is that strength, is that bull rush going to remain consistent in affecting NFL tackles? When you drop 20 pounds, are you still going to maintain your strength at the NFL level? We don't know. We're never going to know until he's drafted and plays at the NFL level, where, again, more questions come into play, because if you aren't a finesse player and if that 20 pounds really affects the way you can bull rush NFL tackles, well, that knocks Shemar Stewart down another peg, makes him a, I don't want to say more of a big question mark, but again, kind of pushes you further down the drafting board for a person like myself. And not to mention, again, violent hands, aggressive hands. The hand placement is inconsistent at the point of the attack, which when you look at his tape, you look at his production, a lot of that culminated in a lackluster Texas A&M 2024 season where he had 42 pressures and just 2 sacks. I think it showcased that he does struggle to finish at times, where a 26.9 missed tackle rate, only those 2 sacks. There's so much to like from Shemar Stewart. But when you're talking about number 11 overall, this team doesn't have 1, 2, 3 defensive tackles to even start the season for you. You can even get into maybe then you have a left guard, whether it's Kelvin Banks or a Josh Simmons or a Josh Connerly or other players that are ready to go day one. I don't know if Shemar Stewart fits the bill for San Francisco because you're betting on traits over production. And even some of those traits are a little rough around the edges where he's an athletic freak. He has the size. But if the strength is a question and he doesn't have a finesse game after losing the weight, Shemar Stewart becomes one of the more polarizing figures where you may have the next Rashawn Gary, who is very similar to Shemar Stewart coming out of college, who's had a pretty great career for the Green Bay Packers. But there also is a concern where maybe he is Jalon Walker with the Jacksonville Jaguars or Tyree Wilson for the Las Vegas Raiders, even a Kwity Paye for the Indianapolis Colts, where none of those guys were really worth taking where they were picked. Walker went number 1 overall above Aiden Hutchinson. What a massive miss by the Jaguars. And Tyree Wilson goes to the Raiders and has really become a nothing or a non-impact player for them entering in later portions of his rookie deal. So I like Shemar Stewart. Have the Niners been picking towards more of the 22 range or where Green Bay picks at 21 overall? I can see that. The Lions at 28 and even Kansas City at 31. But he's a project player that you hope can impact you on day one. He does fit San Francisco's system and scheme. However, there's just too many questions for me at number 11 for a player like Shemar Stewart. Moving along here, the next player I would not take, or at least refrain from taking if I was the San Francisco 49ers at pick number 11. And to clarify here, I'm not saying these players are bad, are going to be bad. These are just some players where when you're talking about just outside of the top 10, you have to really nitpick and kind of narrow down who can be a blue chipper, who can impact on day one. Because San Francisco just annihilated, wrecked, and just pull up, all the entirety of their floor on the defensive line, where you have to make sure you nail your first 3 or 4 picks. I don't think Shemar Stewart is the person to take, nor do I think Jalon Walker out of Georgia is a player I would take at number 11. Again, starting with the good, great athlete, violent hands, twitchy player, fluid hips. Kind of sounds like Shemar Stewart. He has natural good leverage with a 6'1", 245-pound frame. He can also drop into coverage with that linebacker background. However, that's where the good ends for a player like Jalon Walker for me. I've seen him on boards at pick number 8, at pick number 9 to the Saints, have him going above San Francisco at number 11 overall, where I just can't get on board with that. I don't think he fits San Francisco's system. Again, like Shemar Stewart, getting into the bad now, a twitchy player that's a high-end athlete that relies on power, but falls on traits more often than production. Last year at Georgia, 33 pressures, 4 sacks, an 18.3% pass rush win rate, just like Shemar Stewart. Really doesn't have a pass rushing plan, but unlike Shemar Stewart, who I think can play inside, outside for you, may give you more of that prototypical wide 9 edge rusher, Jalon Walker really doesn't have his teeth, kind of sunken into the edge rushing position just yet. He just transitioned from edge rush or from linebacker to edge rusher at Georgia the past couple years. Again, he doesn't really, I don't want to say understand the position. That's really unfair to a player like him who is trying to learn it still. But again, he's trying to learn the position still, kind of get an idea as to who he wants to be as an edge rusher or at the NFL level. He'll run into blockers and then try to adjust then, whereas you want your players to have a pass rushing plan where they know how they're going to attack a tackle or guard. They know what they're going to do before the ball is snapped more often than not. Think Nick Bosa, who's one of the best in football. He has an idea. He has the pass rushing plans. He has a swim move. He has the hand swipes. He has a fake spins. He has everything you need to be a top edge rusher, where Shemar Stewart and Jalon Walker, you like the traits, you like their twitchiness as an athlete, but from a prototypical can you get to the quarterback and finish type of edge rusher, Shemar Stewart nor Jalon Walker really give you that on day one at pick number 11. Again, he'll run right into blockers and then try to adjust, which really isn't what you want to do at the NFL level. I think there's room to grow for sure. The more he ingrains himself as an edge rusher, you'll see some growth from him. But as an instant impact player, I don't think Jalon Walker really fits the bill for San Francisco at number 11. And even if the hope is, well, one day he'll get there. With good coaching, he'll get there. There's no promise things eventually click for a player like Jalon Walker, even with Robert Saleh and Chris Kosarek on the defensive line. So you hope it happens. But again, at number 11, you got to find day one starters, guys you can bet on to be on your roster in 4 to 5 years where you're picking up that fifth-year option. I don't know if Jalon Walker comes into his own ever at the NFL level, despite being one of the better athletes in this year's draft class. I think Walker is very much kind of stuck in between positions, being a linebacker previously, an off-ball linebacker, mind you, and he's trying to kind of figure out, what he's going to do, figure out his body, get his body right, and kind of prepared for the NFL lifestyle where it may take him 2 to 3 years. San Francisco does not have 2 to 3 years to wait for a player at number 11 like Jalon Walker to hopefully become something, where you have players like Mike Green, who has some red flags for sure, is a much more refined player. Obviously, Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, Tyreek Williams, Michael Williams from Georgia. Those guys make more sense, more refined, more day one impact players compared to someone like Jalon Walker, who will need some time. If you want to drop him back into coverage, that may be an aspect you like and say, well, there is versatility for someone like Jalon Walker, where other players like Shemar Stewart, Mike Green, Michael Williams don't really have that versatility. Even then, Jalon Walker, the IQ, I don't want to say is low, but the ability to diagnose plays and the anticipation and coverage really isn't what you want from an off-ball linebacker. So again, he has to become an edge rusher at the NFL level, and his body and his pass rushing plan really is not there yet. I think he's a project player. That sounds like a bad thing to say, but I think for a team like the Panthers at 8, the Saints at 9, teams that have more time to give Jalon Walker makes more sense for him. You can even talk about a team like the Ravens that like to rotate their players, have veteran edge rushers all over the place to, again, give him more time. They can utilize him more correctly. I wouldn't be shocked to see a team like the Seattle Seahawks at 18 take him either. Again, Mike McDonald likes to rotate guys in. It could kind of narrow down what Walker's asked to do on day one, in year one, and maybe even in year two, which could benefit him down the road. But for the San Francisco 49ers at pick number 11, I am saying avoid Jalon Walker out of Georgia at all costs. And at this point, I want to pause and ask you kindly to go to SeatGeek.com and use our promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com. You can save yourself $20 off your first purchase, whether it's baseball games, NBA playoff games, or a concert this summer or in spring, or even if you're waiting impatiently to the NFL schedule to drop to buy NFL tickets, you can use that promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Let's move on to number 3 on my list, and it may be one of the more polarizing players, I think, of the first round, because This player is almost perfect as a prospect. And it's a position that San Francisco, while maybe not this year, maybe next year may desperately need once Trent Williams retires at left tackle. And this player is Josh Simmons from Ohio State. And again, Josh Simmons is awesome. He's literally a perfect prospect for a team like San Francisco. He fits the bill offensively. He can run the wide zone scheme. He's a great zone blocker. He is good in pass protection. He has quick feet to stay in front of defenders. He can get into his blocks and maintain them most of the time. An explosive first step for a left tackle, very wide and low stance to maintain leverage and be balanced in pass protection. He's also a finisher where you have defensive players that don't finish their pass rushing plans. When they get to the quarterback, it's like, oh, what do I do? And can't bring ball carriers down. Josh Simmons is the opposite on the offensive line. He wants to wreck shop. He wants to just throw at rushers off to the side, spit on them, step on them. Not literally there, but he's a finisher with that dog mentality out of a tackle position on the offensive line. Also, great production. Just one pressure last year from Ohio State before getting injured. But that is where things become a very serious concern. And I'm going to call this the bad for a player like Josh Simmons. However, I think it's more of the worrisome because I don't really think there's anything bad from Josh Simmons outside of the injury. The one nitpick I have is that you wish he was a little stronger with the anchor. He doesn't give you that guard versatility, but I think getting into the NFL, getting his body right, you may be able to improve the anchor. You can kind of move the weight around, get his density more because he already has a low frame. He already has a low stance where the technique is there. It's almost borderline perfect, but you want to improve the anchor for someone like Josh Simmons. However, the big knock that everyone's talking about is he's coming off a torn patellar in his knee. And that is a massive sticking point for a player like Josh Simmons, where you love everything he brings to the table. When you talk about pick number 11, there's a scenario where if you're the San Francisco 49ers, you could maybe pitch the idea of, well, we're going to redshirt him for a year while Trent plays out his contract, or if he wants to retire after next season. Okay, but at pick number 11, where you are bringing back almost your entire offensive line minus Aaron Banks, and from all indications, they like Colton McKivitz enough. Obviously, you love Dominic Pooney. They like Jake Brendel. You wouldn't go center in the first round anyways. And they also like Ben Barch enough to, I think of him as a starting left guard next year, although I wouldn't mind drafting a guard in the mid-rounds this year. I think Josh Simmons is a player where it's like, well, he fits a need maybe in 1 to 2 years' time. Is it worth not picking one of the better defensive tackle prospects at 11 just in case Josh Simmons can get back to his fully formed, healthy version of himself in a year? Now, he has worked out. The thought is that the Texans at pick 25, maybe the Dolphins at pick 12, Tron Armstead just retired. I can see them taking Josh Simmons. However, both of those teams are much more desperate for left tackle, and maybe the Texans are, but the Dolphins really aren't in a position to, I think, be a player for the playoffs this year. Tua has some health issues. They're probably going to trade Tyreek Hill. At least it seems that way this offseason. A lot of holes on the offensive line. They need guards. They need tackles. Again, a much more desperate team for a player like Josh Simmons, and can actually, in a way, redshirt him for a year with Patrick Paul being their left guard likely this season. But for San Francisco, despite the fit making sense, I just am not sold on drafting a player, letting him sit for a year. It doesn't work for me. You have many more needs. If he was healthy, if Josh Simmons was healthy on day one and there wasn't an injury to his knee, I can get on board with this. Have him be your right tackle for a year, move him over to left tackle, either trade McKivitz or let him be your swing tackle. I wouldn't mind that. Although I wouldn't love it, I wouldn't mind it. That said, there's no promise he's healthy. There's no promise he can maintain his health for a full year. And I don't think drafting a player that has a serious knee injury despite working back healthy and looking good in workouts, you have many more needs on your defensive line. You can argue even taking Tyler Warren, or you can argue taking maybe a cornerback, although we'll get to cornerback here in a second. I just don't see a reason as to why Josh Simmons should be the pick over players like Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon, Mike Green, and other players that you desperately need value at their positions on the draft board. Moving along here to number 4 of my top 5 players to avoid in this year's draft class at pick number 11. It's a weird one because it's very similar to Josh Simmons, because both these players have injuries. Both these players are great players when they're healthy. However, you just don't know exactly if you're going to get that full health from these guys in 2025 and beyond. The next player is cornerback out of Michigan, Will Johnson. Starting with the good with Will Johnson, he is the perfect size for a cornerback, 6'2", around 200 pounds, really great size, has instincts that are off the chart, that I think can flip a game for any defense. He can read offenses with ease. He's a high IQ player you love. I think if he can keep the plays in front of him, he's a shutdown, lockdown, bona fide CB1 in most draft classes. Now, depending on how you view Travis Hunter, he's kind of his own animal. He can be a CB1, he can be a receiver 1 at the NFL level. But if he picks receiver, Will Johnson becomes the number 1 guy at the cornerback position. He has fluid hips. He's a great transitioner, going back to his left, to his right, attacking wide receivers underneath. Also, a really strong tackler after the catch, which I do think separates him from players like Jahdae Barron and others that may go in the first round. Also, a really good run defender, a 73.7 PFF run defense grade the last couple years at Michigan. So you're getting an all-around good zone cornerback. That's where the bad comes into play, because I do not think Will Johnson is a man coverage corner. If you're a PFF person, a 50.6 PFF man coverage grade, I don't think he has the long speed to be a consistent man coverage corner at the NFL level. Like, in my head, if he's playing people like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and even Puka Nacua, you can go, if you want to say Malik Neighbors, like, I start to get concerned. A healthy Brandon Aiyuk could probably have some fun with a player like Will Johnson, albeit Brandon Ayuk's health is a bigger question mark right now than Will Johnson's in 2025. That said, you could maybe get into the argument that he was hurt last year. He's fully healthy again. And you can maybe sell me on the idea of, well, you can get the best lockdown cornerback in this year's draft class. You can get him at pick number 11. You have Lenore, you have Renardo Green, you have Will Johnson, you like Trey Brown, you like Darrell Luter Jr. enough. However, this idea he was only hurt this year and he's fully healthy now, I don't think is necessarily true. Where, yes, he hurt his shoulder and he hurt his toe. They were massive problems for us last year. He had turf toe last year. The shoulder injury cost him plenty of games the last couple seasons. But also at the combine, he left with a hamstring injury as well. So I don't think the injury concern is like the biggest deal in the world, but at pick number 11, and without really having the need for a top tier cornerback, don't think Will Johnson, although if you trade back in your San Francisco, maybe to pick 19, maybe to pick 20, you can sell yourself on the idea. But there are teams in front of San Francisco, like the Raiders at 6, that desperately need a cornerback. And if you like Will Johnson, I can see him going to Las Vegas. Let's say they don't love Ashton Genty. Let's say Will Campbell's gone, or Ted McMillan is gone. I can see them saying, look, let's get, at least on paper, and when he's healthy, one of the best cornerbacks in all football in last year's collegiate level. But if you're San Francisco, I see a lot of pundits, a lot of people saying, well, they lost Travarius Ward. They had this massive need at cornerback. And it's head scratching, because I don't think losing Travarius Ward, albeit it stinks, we all love Mooney Ward out here in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, He wasn't good last year for San Francisco. You were smart to get ahead of it and draft Bernardo Green in last year's draft. You just paid Lenore for a 5-year contract. You don't really have a need for a number one cornerback on a team that primarily plays zone coverage and cover three. And you can find more of those guys down the road. In fact, San Francisco, besides Bernardo Green, has primarily relied on mid-round, late, early day 3 picks. Lenore, Ambry Thomas, and others. Emmanuel Mosley was a UDFA. Even Charvarius Ward, before signing a big contract with San Francisco, was also a UDFA. I think for the Cowboys, then the Chiefs. So I think San Francisco trusts themselves to be able to find the right prospect. I'd probably lean towards a player like Jacob Parrish on day 2, early day 3 maybe, from Kansas State, compared to reaching and banking on Will Johnson being healthy for the 2025 season when you know you have to figure out your defensive line in the first and second rounds of this year's draft. And also, you just really don't know which Will Johnson you're going to get in 2025. Are you going to get 2024 Will Johnson where he's banged up? When he's healthy, you like him a lot, but he's kind of hindered by the shoulder, the toe injury. Maybe it's a hamstring again. Or do you get elite level 2023 Will Johnson where you're saying, wow, this guy is incredible. He's a lockdown cornerback in almost every single level. I just don't think that's really worth banking on, or at least hoping comes to fruition for a team like San Francisco. The Raiders make sense at 6, the Falcons at 15, and Will Johnson to the Cardinals at 16 makes a lot of sense as well. I don't think San Francisco needs a cornerback, and I don't think on day 1 they should even be targeting one. That includes Jahdae Barron, and that includes Will Johnson. My last and final top 5 prospect to avoid at pick number 11 may be a controversial take, and we'll get into the weeds here for a second because it's an edge rusher, so positional need is there, and it's a player that a lot of people like for San Francisco at number 11. That is James Pearce Jr. out of Tennessee. I know. Before you turn off the video, before you unsubscribe, before you leave a hateful comment in the YouTube chat or on the audio podcasting platforms, a rating system, hear me out here for a second, because there's so much to like from James Pearce Jr., very productive player at Tennessee, an 88.9 pass rushing grade per PFF, an 84.2 run defense grade, 59 pressures, 8 sacks, a 22.2% pass rush win rate, has a really good first step, incredibly twitchy player. He's long, he's lengthy, he is going to be tough for tackles to keep up with, knowing how his hips move, the way he can move around, and his movement ability is just like incredible as an edge rusher. He's a pure pass rusher. He has the pass rushing moves that Jalon Walker and Shemar Stewart don't have. He has the swim move, the spin move, the bull rush. He has all those things you like, where it makes you say, well, Sterling, what's your problem? What's your deal? Well, I don't think he actually fits San Francisco's scheme very well. I think he projects to be a 3-4 outside linebacker, where San Francisco's not running a 3-4 whatsoever. I don't think he can put his hand in the ground and play consistently out of that position, where if you're San Francisco, you really don't want to draft a player you're not sure can play with his hand in the ground, knowing Saleh's back and knowing you're using the wide 9 system as your defense, at least for one more year with Saleh, and likely forever as long as Kyle Shanahan is in the building. Now, maybe I'm wrong and Pearce Jr. can adapt, which if you can, awesome. I just haven't really loved the ability to do that at the NFL level. I think teams like the Cardinals at 16 running that kind of 3-4 outs or 3-4 linebacking system they do with Gannon as their DC, as their head coach. The Packers can also make some sense. They've mixed in some of that stuff as LaFleur has taken over. And the Chargers, who just lost Joey Bosa, have an older Khalil Mack. I think at 22, it's a slam dunk pick for them if one of their defensive tackles isn't there. At 22, I'm looking at James Pearce Jr. and Kenneth Grant from Michigan. It's a Harbaugh guy. I think both these players fit that system a lot more than San Francisco's. And I think for a player like James Pearce Jr., for all the things you like, the high motor, he often overruns plays, so kind of play himself out of the play, if you will. He's out of control sometimes, although with good coaching, maybe you can rein that in. That said, he also is a player that kind of relies on jumping the snap. He had 5 offside penalties last year. I don't love that. I'd rather you have the pass, like he already has the pass rushing plan. He has all the moves. Beat him that way. I don't need you jumping snaps. Don't be D4 2.0 and be offsides. Just utilize the skills you have, be more in control of your body. And I think good things can come from James Pearce Jr. However, he is 6'5". He's a bigger, taller player. The pad level can be inconsistent at times, despite having a pretty good PFF run defense grade. With that pad level being high at times, you'll just see tackles toss him to the side, move him out of the way, and he'll kind of play himself out of the running game as well. So there is some coaching things that you hope can be cleaned up. A reminder here that none of these prospects are finished products by any means. All these guys have flaws, but at 11, you have to nitpick. You have to be a little more concerned as to, well, I like you, but do I love you? I like you, but can I work with your flaws? I think James Pearce Jr. is a workable prospect, and I don't think he'll take as much time as Shemar Stewart or Jalon Walker will, knowing that James Pearce Jr. does have the body for this and has played the position year after year at Tennessee. I just don't think he's a great scheme fit. And the biggest thing I've seen with him is the character concerns. He was arrested on traffic charges for speeding, having a suspended license, and failure to present insurance in 2023. Now, all charges were dropped, but again, that'll raise red flags. But maybe you can say, well, Sterling, if every charge was dismissed, why does it matter? It just goes into your choices as a person, as a young man. Now, you can grow. There are things I've done in my young age where it's like, well, looking back, why'd you do that? So there is room to grow, but even if you look at not myself and my takeaways from him, go to Dan Brugler's The Athletic. He has The Beast came out this morning. He even says, some scouts are saying they want to be convinced he actually loves the game of football. Now, sometimes scouts say things and it's to have a player's draft stock fall so they can pick him, but sometimes they're telling the truth. So you have to wonder if there's character concerns and there may not be a love for football. At number 11, is that really a player you want to bank on? Now, some of you might say this, and I want to be fully transparent here. What about Mike Green? Why is Mike Green not on this list? And I want to tell you this. When the allegations of Mike Green were revealed, it was like instant red flag, off my board, can't have it, won't have it. But as time has progressed, while I'm not going to forgive him for those things he has done, he's been pretty open about this. He's kind of accepted, what the allegations were against him, which don't change anything. But he's talked about this. He even said, I was never questioned by police. Nothing ever came about it. I wasn't charged. I wasn't questioned. I simply just said, I got to get out of here for my own personal health, which could be a good thing, could also be a bad thing. That said, San Francisco has talked to Mike Green twice now. I think that is arguably one of the top prospects they've talked to the most since the Senior Bowl, in which San Francisco had their scouts there as well. So there is reason to believe that they met with him more than 2 times as the draft process has progressed. And if they like him enough, they brought him in for a top 30 visit. That gives me more confidence that they feel more comfortable with him than I previously thought, which has opened my eyes to the idea that, maybe if Shanahan and Lynch, who have been very, very open and honest, that if you have character concerns, we're not going to draft you. Ever since Reuben Foster got picked, and ever since they came in 2017, They have cleaned house of every single character concern. They're not going to play with it. They're not going to deal with it. It is like, if you have problems off the field, don't even bother showing up tomorrow. And I think if Lynch and Shanahan are more on board with him, that gives me a good idea that they're okay with what happened. Maybe it's not as big of a deal as things have seemed, and does give me more ease in that I can maybe trust Mike Green as a player, or at least, to put it clearly here, it at least makes it easier for myself to be more cautiously optimistic about Mike Green and his off the field concerns. It also helps that Mike Green, to me, is a better prospect and fits San Francisco's defense a little more than James Pearce Jr. does. However, I like James Pearce Jr., but when you have those things where I'm questioning your love of football, I don't think you're really fit the scheme we run here in San Francisco. It's not like a you're off my board situation. It's just I would have to wait until pick 19 or 21 or 22 to really say, okay, let's draft James Pearce Jr. here, which really is one of the bigger things with most of these players. Josh Simmons, Will Johnson, Jalon Walker, Shemar Stewart, a lot of these guys who are often mocked to San Francisco in my head are like, at 22, this guy makes more sense than 11. At 11, I want Walter Nolan. I want Derek Harmon. I want Mike Green. You can maybe sell me on Kelvin Banks Jr. There are better players to me that fit this system more with less concerns, albeit Mike Green, than James Pearce Jr., Jalon Walker, Shemar Stewart, Josh Simmons, and Will Johnson. Those are my 5 players I would avoid at pick number 11 for the San Francisco 49ers in the 2025 NFL Draft. Before we go, tell me down below which players you do not want to draft at pick number 11 in this year's 2025 NFL Draft. Would you want to take Mike Green? Are you saying, Sterling, you're crazy? Josh Simmons is great, and you love players I don't love at pick number 11. Tell me down below, do you agree with me? Or am I crazy? Are there more players you would avoid at pick number 11? Or is somebody I listed someone you say, no, you got to take him at pick number 11? Tell me down below in the comments. And also use our promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. You can also follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And if you want to get yourself a case of goat fuel, click our link down below in the description and save yourself 10% off your purchase of goat fuel. I got mine in the fridge. It's delicious. It's awesome. It's a great and healthier coffee alternative. So get yourself a can of goat fuel in the description down below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave that review. My name is Sterling Bennett. And until next time, probably on Friday. And as always, folks, stay faithful.